99% of the people that I see come in, they have posture that is like this. It's because everything we do is in front of us. Their head sits forward, their shoulders round forward, they arch their low back because the core isn't strong enough to keep it upright, and they have overly tight pecs which pull their shoulders in. They have weak muscles between their shoulder blades that cannot pull them back like this, and they have weak muscles in their neck that keep their head upright. You would want to stand like this, right? That would be good posture. So aside from making the muscles stronger, they're going to hold you in good posture all day. What happens to your spine when you're like this, aside from your muscles getting overly tight or overly weak, depending on the muscle that we're talking about? Well, you can see here the spine has an S-shaped curve, and it's relatively unpronounced in this model here because they had to bolt it together and this and that, but it should have a nice S-shaped curve going like this. That's to absorb shock from gravity. So if I were to look down like this, my curve goes from here to here. Now it's very straight. Problem with a straight curve, or a lack of any curve, right, is the fact that there's a lot of pressure coming down, vertical pressure from gravity, crushing the cushions that sit between the bones. And you can see these little clear parts here on this model. These are the cushions, these are the discs. And so if you have a lot of pressure coming down because you do not have a good curvature in your spine, and we're not talking about the sideways curvature, that would be scoliosis, right? We're talking front to back, which you would want to have. If you lose that over time with poor posture from injury and trauma and all sorts of things, then these discs, they get crushed. And they get crushed and they get crushed, and eventually they get so thin that it's just about bone on bone. So what does the body do? The body's extremely intelligent. And so what it does is it fortifies the joint. And the way it fortifies the joint is by adding more bone, right? So it starts by adding bone here in the front part of the vertebra. We call this vertebral body. It's the big part of the vertebral spine, big part of the bone, right? And so it adds bone, it adds bone, it adds bone. And now that bone is good for stability, but it's not good for range of motion or the structures around it. So if it adds bone here, and eventually that bone is sticking out this way, what's it going to hit? The nerves. Second, it adds bone back here in the facets. We call this facet arthrosis. And the facets are parts of the spine that sit in the back part of the spine that lock in like roof shingles at each level. And you can see these, how they lock in kind of like roof shingles, right? And it adds bone here. So then it adds bone in the front and back, and it encroaches on the nerve that's coming off of the spinal cord that's traveling down like this through the vertebral canal, or the hole that sits in the middle of all the vertebrae, right? And so now we have this narrowing of space by adding more bone. We call this stenosis. Stenosis means narrowing, right? So we have a narrowing of this hole, and we have a lack of space for this nerve to function properly. Now, this is something that I cannot go into the body and remove. I can't remove that bone. But what I can do is I can slow down this process in the first place by improving your posture, by improving your strength and range of motion, and by taking pressure off of these nerves with adjustments and correcting misalignments in the spine. Because if there's a misalignment, it's pressing on that nerve. And if this nerve runs down like this and it comes down your arm and it's being choked, how do you think your arm's going to feel, right? Maybe you feel numbness, tingling. Maybe you feel some burning, maybe a lack of strength, right? And so we want to make sure these nerves are functioning optimally, all right? So that's what the adjustment does, is it helps to take pressure off the nerves. Now, aside from that, it helps to loosen muscles that attach to the spine. If these muscles here are really tight, this is the root of the spine of the scapula. Here's your shoulder blade, and here's the spine of the scapula. And so at the root of the spine, between there and the superior angle, which is up here of the scapula, you have a muscle called the levator scapula that attaches. It then attaches to the first four cervical or neck bone transverse processes, or outside parts of the bone, right? And so if it's attaching here and it's really tight, what's going to happen? It's going to pull these bones, right? So if I go in and I just do the adjustment and I don't address the tight levator scapula here, for example, did I really do my job, right? Well, no, because it's still pulling on them. So I always loosen the muscles first. As you saw before when I was stretching his neck, I'm loosening very specific muscles with each angle and each movement, right? To free up the motion of his cervical spine, and we do it throughout the entire spine. Right? So we free up the motion of that muscle, we loosen it up. Then we do the adjustment to put it back into alignment. Then we do postural correction and strengthening so that it can stay like that for a longer period of time. Now, aside from taking stress off the nerves, the adjustment also reduces inflammation, helps you release good endorphins, so you feel good after, right? Releasing dopamine and serotonin and alpha, beta, gamma endorphins. And inflammation is associated with near every chronic disease. So if we could take inflammation down with an adjustment, that's a good thing. Also eating things like fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, tuna, herring, sardines, anchovies, leafy greens like spinach and kale. Extra virgin olive oil is a great anti-inflammatory, nuts and seeds, and many other things that are whole food from nature, right? So it's more than just the adjustment. It's the nutrition, it's the adjustment, it's the postural correction, it's the strengthening, it's loosening up all the muscles to kind of cumulatively improve your overall health and give you the best health outcome that you could possibly get, right? In terms of your wellness journey. Now, with the adjustment, you're getting blood flow into these cushions too. And remember we said they get thinner over time. So if we can get some blood flow to these, we can keep them nice and thick and healthy. So what else can keep blood flow to these to keep them thick and healthy? Things like walking, jogging, swimming, biking, movement. We call that process imbibition, pumping of blood, oxygen, and nutrition into the spine, right? Because these discs right here, as intelligent as the body is, they don't make blood themselves. You have to feed blood into them with movement. The adjustment is one type of stimulus that can do that, right? So what happens when you get an adjustment aside from the realignment, and why do you hear cracking? You see these right here, these roof shingles we were talking about? Well, they have a joint capsule around them. Picture a bandage, because they can't be naked in the body like this. So there's something that surrounds them. Otherwise, they'd move all over the place, right? And they can still move to some degree to put pressure on the nerves if there's misalignment of the bone. But this joint capsule keeps that range of motion within limits. In this little space here between them is synovial fluid. In that, just like there's synovial fluid in your elbow joint or in your knee joint, for example. And these little gas bubbles, nitrogen gas bubbles, build up in the fluid right in here between these parts of the bone. And when you get an adjustment and it realigns the spine, say it was turned like this, pressing on this nerve, and I push it that way, what you hear is those little gas bubbles popping in between these bones here and the synovial fluid. It's not actually anything cracking. It's not dangerous. It's safer than driving here. It's one of the safest things you can do, right? Especially when you're trained on what to do and what not to do as a licensed chiropractor. To make an appointment, you can visit wendwellness.com and you can click book appointment and you can schedule right online. It'll show you what appointments are available. You pick a time slot and we'll be there. Also, you can call 631-485-3643. That's the office number, and you can schedule an appointment with our office manager, Linda, and we'll get you in as soon as possible.